3.5 minutes of
Give me just a quick second on that, and I'll have it right up for you.
putting things up, So it was great because he was crying, and all of a sudden I'm in my therapy role. Got it. You can still hear me, right, Tom?
Yes. Yep.
Phew. Thank God.
What was that?
Someone hears me.
All right, as Chuck would say, my brothers and sisters, don't go it alone. There is someone there for you to reach out for and get all the services that you have earned and deserve. It's a very simple number, my friends. 1-800-273-8255. Press 1 at that prompt. And if you are a veteran or know of a veteran that is having any type of mental anxiety, physical anxiety, or just need someone to talk to, reach out. That number one more time, 1-800-273-8255, and press 1 at the prompt.
Did you get that?
Anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young.
I think, Wolfie, I think I'm on the space. We're on the space channel right there. Matt Stiles and Dr. Joe is back in, but thank you everyone for listening, folks. Next week we've got the folks from BASH coming in, Veterans Supportive Housing. So, hello there, Dr. Joe. We love you, virtual hugs.
Anybody here see my old friend Martin? Can you tell me where he's gone?
So this is behind the scenes at WATD.
He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just look
Not at all. Hey, these guys are going to be setting up. They're doing a live show.
Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be someday soon.
WATD FM Marshfield, WBMS Brockton. This is the South Shores radio station, 95.9 FM WATD. Streaming online at 959watd.com. And with your smart speaker, just by saying play WATD.
AP News, I'm Tim McGuire. On Capitol Hill, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talked about what keeps her up at night.
To see a president of the United States in a debate with a potential president of the United States.
That's amazing work. I was in substance
refused to condemn white supremacists.
At the White House, Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany says the president did denounce the Proud Boys.
He was asked, will you tell them to stand down? He said, sure. He went on to stand. He said, stand back. And then just yesterday when he was asked, he said specifically, stand down. A synonym with stand back. And the president said, sure, when asked by the moderator whether they should stand down.
A self-proclaimed member of the Proud Boys, Alan Sweeney, pleaded not guilty to a dozen charges related to clashes in the streets of Portland, Oregon. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden both addressed the annual Al Smith dinner in New York City. The two, coming off their chaotic debate of Tuesday night, recording their remarks. Biden says the pandemic and other current challenges are a test of the people.
With each crisis, our faith is tested. Faith in our institutions, in one another, in truth, in science, and reason. We have to guard ourselves from rationalizing that this is normal and from numbing us to the pain and suffering of so many fellow Americans.
Trump blamed the pandemic on China while he praises how New Yorkers fought against the virus.
Our country and the entire world have been struck with a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic. China shouldn't have let it happen, but it did. When the virus came in from China, we saw New Yorkers respond with the same grit and tenacity, courage, and selflessness that have always defined this city that we love so much.
The 75th annual Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner, which went viral because of the coronavirus, is held each year in New York City. This is AP News.
Good evening. A pretty sky overnight with the full harvest moon. Pleasant, low in the mid and upper 50s, some patchy fog,
I can hear
especially
you,
toward the Cape first thing in the morning tomorrow. We can see a little brightening to the sky, but overall much cooler.
You don't want to advertise.
Shower, some rain later in the day, a high in the mid 60s. Tomorrow night, clearing and chilly below 48. We'll stay that way this weekend. On the cool side to start October with sunshine Saturday, a few clouds, the high.
Mark, you should be good on these speaker now.
Sweater weather, sunshine followed by more clouds, high 60 to 64. And a storm developing along the coast looks to bring some rain, rather raw breeze off the ocean.
Just 1 second.
And then drying out by the middle of next week. For WATD, I'm meteorologist Rob Gilman.
How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law, Thomas McCoy, and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Stretch the kindness, brush with madness. Is it sadness or just a show Van Gogh?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dr. Joe Show.
Thank you. You want to do it again? Mark, do it again.
Did it not work?
Oh, it worked. It worked. It worked. Go ahead.
Do you want me to do it again then?
Yeah, of course.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, what's going on?
I think we're going to be having two realities tonight.
We're going to be in two realities.
I believe that people listening on WATD heard Mark just fine. The people watching us on YouTube Live
heard you.
Frozen in a very unfortunate pose.
Well, what do you think, Tom, though? We got your name on the intro like we should have for a while.
I am honored. I feel seen, Dr. Joe.
I'm glad. Because, Kevin Chase, who's our producer, had no problem with it. He was able to get it done, and we got it done because Tom McCoy is one of our co-hosts. Now, Mark, are we going to be able to hear you?
He's muted at the moment.
You're muted on the video.
Can you hear me through the radio?
Now I can hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And the radio listeners can hear me through this microphone here.
Oh, that's so good. Technology is wonderful. For those folks who are watching on YouTube, and also for our listening audience on WATD, I just want to tell you how exciting this is. Because Mark Stiles is in studio. He's right there at WATD with Ben Nipotent, our in-studio producer. It's great. It was wonderful to see the guys there from Veterans Voice, Greg and Wolfie. Yeah, we missed them too. So on YouTube Live, you're pretty soft. We can't really hear you that well. So we need to figure out the technology. But in the meantime, while we're figuring that out, we have some exciting things to talk about tonight. Because we are going to try to address what's happening a little bit with online schooling, with COVID. And Mark, I hope we can hear you enough so that you can talk a bit about the school that you've created in your law firm for your employees.
So can you hear me or not hear me?
Now we can. Yeah, let's try it.
And you're my hero, Ben Nipotent.
It's not the most beautiful sound yet.
Hold on, let me fix that. Is that better?
little bit. You know what? This is what we're talking about. Adaptation is innovation. We're going to figure this out as we go through the show.
Well, you know what Ben said to me when I first got here?
What did he say?
Jump onto Zoom.
Yeah.
And everybody else said, hey, I didn't know that was an option. Set me up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. And it's got so much potential. But I must admit, I'm a little jealous that you're in the studio.
Don't be jealous.
It's a scouting run. Let's consider
it's going to be one of those nights. I can see it now. What we may have Mark do in a moment or two is actually just take his computer and go into a whole nother room. But then won't we still be able to hear you on WATD if we're just doing it as if it's Zoom, but you're just doing it from there?
I'm thinking what
computer
I do is I take the computer.
We take the computer.
I'm thinking we take the computer,
on the side,
push it on its side, and turn it back on.
Whatever you guys want to do, I just want to thank the WATD and YouTube Live audience for muddling through the first few minutes with us on this.
You remember the
but
first
that's
muddle?
part of what we do. You know what's also great about it is we are talking about education and we're learning things right now. Yep. So, Mark, let's try this one more time.
Let's try this one more time.
Good. That's good. How's your school going?
Great.
At Stiles Law.
So there's a little bit of feedback on my end.
A little bit.
With speaker.
Next time we'll do a tech run before. Go ahead.
Mars. It was how's that? Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds fine. We'll manage.
You nailed it. Ben did it. Ben Nipiton. Can we get a round of applause for Ben Nipiton? We did this. Dr. Joe, you knew we would do it. That was very cool.
Of course.
The school's going great. You know, it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of folks in and out of the school system, and I was asking how they're doing, right? Because it's a tremendous struggle for them right now. You know, a lot of the folks that decided to join the teaching profession were teachers, not innovators and entrepreneurs and tech gurus. And all of a sudden, here you go. This is how you do it now, right?
Right.
So it's been really interesting because, you know, people are throwing daggers at them, you know. It's unfortunate because everybody's doing the best that they can, right? I mean, isn't that the ultimate goal of what we're here, what we're doing? And
it's an IM, right? It's always an IM, right? And the system has an IM as well, and we are absolutely adapting. So the teachers have to become tech people, and that's a challenge.
And then it's leadership, right? So is the leadership conveying the message effectively? Is the leadership, you know, conveying a message, right? So you feel bad all the way around, and, you know, nobody's having a good time with it. I mean, it's very taxing, the whole back to school concept that everybody was waiting for. I mean, all summer long, it's like, well, what's going to happen in September?
Right. Right. I mean, it really is so interesting how many adaptations there are, because teachers have to become technicians, but many parents have to become teachers.
Right.
You know, and that is part of what I'm hearing as well, is how the parents balancing having to work and put food on the table, but also be sure that their kid isn't sort of wandering off. How do we keep them tuned in to what's happening? On top of, some schools are hybrid, where they're going, you know, the students are going into school, and the teachers, I think, are absolutely rightly worried about their health and their students' health, and the students who then come back home. I mean, it's it's remarkable how people are truly adapting to what's happening and making it work the best it can. And folks, that is part of what the IM is. Rather than blame other people, let's understand this and figure out what small changes can we make to make it work. And then on top of that, COVID doesn't immunize you against having attention deficit. And now what do we do? Because now we have some kids who are at home getting medication, which we know wears off, and we'll talk a bit more about the medication part, but that's also a fascinating challenge for parents. But many of them have never seen their kids in a school setting, and now they have to create one. It's wild. So I really wanted to spend some time talking about this tonight and just brainstorming, because there aren't any answers right now. The only answer that we have, the only thing that we know, is that our sponsors are expecting us to put them on the air. So we're going to take our first commercial break already, and we'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show. So, Mark, can you still hear us or not anymore?
Oh, that's right. So right now, I think he was talking through Ben's login.
Okay. And now he can come back to us a little bit, but I don't want to mess up the audio.
Now, if you wanted, I'm going to go back. So when we go live, I'll go to radio. When we go here, I'll go here.
You'll be able to talk to them in queue for yourself if you just change.
Okay. This is so much fun. I totally love this.
It's like I'm back in 2007 playing Halo 3, trying to figure out everyone's headsets.
There's a delay.
It is great. It's so funny. Totally love this. So Facebook Live, folks, there, or YouTube. We're on YouTube Live tonight, right?
Right.
So
we're making them fight over us.
I'd be good. I think so. So they should. But for those on YouTube Live, if you've got any thoughts or questions about online schooling and what's going on in your own world, just feel free to plug them in, and we'll start talking about this. And then if all goes well, we're going to have a special guest for the last few minutes of the show tonight. But then she'll be back, if all goes well, even more weller. That doesn't sound good. If all continues to go well, she will be back with us for the whole show next week. And that is Kelly Miller, who's the author of an incredible book on attention deficit and how to manage it. Do we have the title of that book yet?
We do. The book is Thriving with ADHD. It's a workbook for kids.
Yeah, a workbook for kids, thriving with ADHD. And my understanding is, we had Kelly on when it was first coming out, the book, and it has maintained incredible traction. And it's now, I think, the #1 ADD book on Amazon.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm so excited for her. And so she will be coming back on either to chat with us a little bit tonight, but hopefully for the whole show next week. So, we'll start promoting this, and people can start writing in their thoughts about online schooling and what's happening.
And we're back, the Dr. Joe Show. Talking about remote schooling, ADHD.
Yeah. So Tom, this remote schooling, I mean, you're not directly affected by it at all, but what can you imagine it would be like for a kid who's trying to concentrate at home?
Well, I can answer with my limited experience doing virtual summer schooling.
Great.
Yeah, so this was back in high school, I believe between junior and senior year. Only subject I ever failed was chemistry, which to this day I still argue is fine.
Okay.
But I failed chemistry, and I was required to take a summer online course. I imagine it's become a more refined process that keep kids more honest. you were required to watch video modules, and it would play through the ends. You couldn't jump around the time. So press play, you watch it, you pay attention, and you have it on the background as I play Counter-Strike. That's what I did, and I wasn't a good student with chemistry.
Yeah,
that was remote learning right there.
Exactly right. That was the beginning of remote learning.
It was, and I imagine there's more supervision, surely, because it's the teachers themselves are working remotely, and it's not so much an enterprise. It's not so much of a private enterprise.
When you were playing the module, that was a pre-recorded tape, though. You could watch it whenever you wanted, and you just couldn't hit fast forward or something.
Exactly. So it was like a lecture in lieu of like a live lecture in a classroom.
And you had a video game going on in the background?
Yeah, I just played it and had the window in the back. If these kids are doing actual Zoom sessions together and with the parents in the room, and I imagine there's a lot more oversight. There's a lot more anxiety.
You think all the parents are in the room sitting in class with the kid or at work? Or
of the younger kids, I'm sure a lot of them are. Like the ones on Facebook that I know of. Because they're working from home too, the ones that I know. Yeah. So it'll be like a little incubator. They're in the dining room, the kids are on the couch.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it could be tremendous for education.
Yep.
If we can get it right, because so often parents don't really know what's going on in the classroom, and now they have access to it. They are the classroom. But the reality is, how do we subsidize this? How do we, help parents teach their kids at home? I mean, there's a huge new enterprise in this that we could really imagine and create.
But for COVID, we would not be having this conversation, though. We would still be doing what we were doing before and before that. And
yeah, we're asking questions now that would have been heretical even 5 years ago.
It's true.
How do you envision the public, quote unquote, public school system coming out of this 24 months from now?
I think it's going to be just as important for reasons that I don't think we should be proud of. Like we talked about this a few weeks ago about how kids rely on public schools for their lunches because there's so much food insecurity, especially nowadays. We're going to have to find ways to work around that if we can't be in the same room together. But I think public school will come out of this. It just won't be as recognizable is the safe answer.
How do you envision it though? If it's not recognizable, what does it look like? Is it broken into pieces?
It'll be, I imagine, broken into pieces for at least the next 2 years. The staggered, like what Timmy's doing, where it's by at least half, perhaps even more so. Maybe we do it by thirds, where you're in person 1 day and a half, and then it's remote.
It's something very interesting tonight, Dr. Joe, that the city of Boston is at a 3.5 on the Richter scale, or I don't know what the scale is called for the COVID. For the COVID, that's what someone said their grandmother said. I think I'm looking at the COVID, it's coming by. But if it gets to 4.0, public schools in Boston go home.
Yeah, everything will shut down again. Right, it'll shut down again. That's right.
What is that number? What is that ratio number, that 3.5? There is down to 2, it was up to 2.7. It's now at 3.5, trending on.
I think people want it around 0.9. I mean, under 1 is what we really remember. We had Josh Baracus from Boston Medical who said, ideally, if it's 0.9 or 1, that means things at least are relatively controlled. It's not gone. But now there are these upticks everywhere. It's not gone. To get back to the schools for a moment, though, You know, there's an enormous amount of literature on the time that schools are most effective at starting. So, you know, seniors and high school kids, very often they've got to be in school before 8 o'clock in the morning, right? And there was a study done on the number of car accidents in schools that started just 1 hour later at 9 o'clock. And the number of car accidents went down dramatically.
Wow.
And these were because the kids who are driving into school are still sort of sleepy.
Right.
You know, it's not necessarily on a kid's time frame for the older kids to have to get in there earlier. And then, you know, the elementary school kids sometimes start later. It should be completely reversed.
Right.
This may be an opportunity to see that, where it would be really interesting to track how the grades are if kids don't have to necessarily start at 8 o'clock in the morning because they're home, and maybe the teachers and everything can just shift to a little bit later on. Kids will be awake, they'll be more alert, they may be more ready to learn. It's not such a big burden on the teachers who have to be at school 6 o'clock or 6:30 to prepare for their kids coming in at 8. There could be a huge, huge potential advantage to this if we're willing to adapt.
Right.
If we're willing to not just stick with the old way of doing things.
Well, we saw that with corporate world, right? Corporate world has done that, right? So
what do you mean, Mark? How they've done it?
We for years wanted to get more of our employees working from home. We bought laptops, we bought cloud encryption, we bought, you know, all of the antivirus, all of the ways that you can safely connect from home. Right. Why are you coming in? Why do you have to come in? Don't come in if you don't have to, right? You have a laptop. We've bought this. We have encrypted emails. We're safe, but you couldn't get people to get out of that routine. And then the COVID came, right? It was, hey, luckily we have all these laptops. You have to go home now.
Mm.
And then it went on, you know, it was a sprint, right? Okay, for 2 weeks, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, maybe more. But if it's more than 2 weeks, then we'll reassess it. And then all of a sudden people were like, okay, I can do this, you know, and I can do it in less time with less distractions and be more productive, and then balance the rest of that time in a more productive way, not in traffic.
Right. But that's now the new challenge, isn't it, Mark? Because there we have a new wave of people working from home, and then school starts.
Right.
I mean, it was okay over the summer, right? You know, I mean, COVID hit sometime in March, and everybody was like, whoa, you know, what's going on? And then the summer came, and now kids are home, and the parents are home, but at least the kids don't have to be in school. And now,
thankfully, they're home, right? Now we're going back to like the olden days.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine recently who started and continued to homeschool his kids from the beginning. He just had his oldest graduated high school last year. So I'm like, buddy, you're so far ahead of this. Like, you're probably sitting there leaning back going, what's the big deal, everybody? This is the way life is supposed to be. The water's warm in here.
Mm.
Get used to it. This is great, because he's never really lived in one place. He wasn't stuck anywhere. So they would bounce from Colorado to San Diego to Cape Cod and just be together.
Right.
And, you know, so I was laughing with him about it, but he's like, oh yeah, I'm fascinated just watching everybody, you know?
Yeah, but then there's another shade to it, which is the socialization of the kids.
Mm.
If you're bouncing from one school to another, how do you make friends? How do you socialize? How do you become part of a community? And we certainly have seen this in kids. It has nothing to do with online schooling, but where parents, for whatever reason, have to move from one school system to another. And I've certainly had kids who've been in, you know, 5 schools by the time they're in, you know, 8th grade. how do you make friends?
Fast.
Well, I think for for a kid who already has problems socializing, that can be maybe even a good thing.
How
So it's a clean slate each move. So a kid who, let's say, to use an antiquated term, is you would call socially retarded, where it's very slow to learn. You make these same mistakes over and over again. These kids just kind of ignore you at best. And it feels like a burned bridge. So maybe you have those lessons learned, but you're still ostracized. If you move to another state, another region, another part of the country, you still have those lessons, and you have a new group of kids to experiment with. Experiment your new social intelligence. So 5 times, that's a good chance to learn.
Switch costumes, be someone different every time you land, or find yourself more personally and deeper.
Be you enhanced.
Yeah.
And I think that certainly is one potential, but you also are moving into a group of kids who already have established their friendships. And we know that sometimes it's difficult to open doors. So what we really would like other kids to do, of course, is to open those doors. I did a post on Facebook. I don't usually post on Facebook, but I wanted to, because it was a reminder of how we can remind people of their value. The whole I am approach. And said, whenever you remind someone of their value, you increase your own value, and it will make you smile. It'll make you smile. I mean, really, doesn't it make you smile when you make somebody else feel good? And so what I would like to hope is that for all those kids who may be going from school to school, or who can't feel that they're completely integrated yet into a group, for those other kids to integrate that kid, bring him in, help him smile. It's remarkable. And, one of the things that always makes me smile is our sponsors, because they have absolutely brought me into their group. They brought the Dr. Joe Show into their group, and I want to thank them. And so we're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back with the Dr. Joe Show.
Bridgewater State University's
All right. So it's you can't hear us, right, Mark?
I think he can't hear us. He needs the headphones.
So did you, when you were in school, did you know any kids who may have had ADD?
Oh, I'm sure.
Would they come out and say it, or
I don't know if anyone said it.
Yeah.
If I did notice it, it was a more, I don't know. Do you have a lot of tics in your typical ADHD kid? Like, say,
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, some of the medicines that we use can actually induce tics in kids who are susceptible to them. That's one of the things that we really watch for as part of, the efficacy of attention deficit medications and whether it's worth using them. But one of the things is that the medicines don't last all day. For many of them, as some do. I mean, we have some long-acting medicines. So one of the things that you might see is a kid, as the medicine is slowly wearing off, like around lunchtime, 1 o'clock, that all of a sudden they become more active and a bit more hyper maybe, or a bit more inattentive. So I was just wondering whether you ever noticed anything like that.
Yeah, it was towards the ends, like 8th grade through 12th grade. It was a small charter school. So there were kids that, to look at it through the high schooler's eye, there were kids that were more annoying that drowned out my possibility of noticing ADHD in other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Such as myself. And
what do you mean, yourself?
Oh, I was insufferable. Man, I would have hated to be a teacher. I would have hated it.
Why do you say that, Tom?
I was like Carlos from Magic School Bus, only less funny and fatter. Like, it was bad. I was annoying. I really, really was. It was less refined sense of humor. I wasn't the charmer that I am now. But you could say that I was getting the rust out, letting the faucet run. Yeah, you can't. Are we back with the Dr. Joe show?
Are we back? Because we don't hear anything.
This really fits the theme, doesn't it?
It's so wonderful. It could not be better.
This is meta. This is black box theater.
We have no idea whether the people on WATD can hear us just talking right over you, Mark. Ben hasn't put our audio back on.
Well, he hasn't unmuted himself, so we can't hear Mark or anything on WATD. Oh, and there he goes.
I thought you were messing with me the whole time.
Usually Tom gets that one, but that's okay.
So wait, are we back live on WATD?
Are we back live on WATD?
Hey.
Are you messing with me now, Dr. Joe?
Oh, I have no idea what's going on.
You hear this, Dr. Joe? Dr. Joe, ground control to Dr. Joe.
Yes, I can hear you. Now I can hear you.
Flashbacks to McAfee just mouthing at us.
Right.
Remember that first episode we did with McAfee, and we set up cameras, and it was totally wigging him out?
Yeah, and in retrospect, that I could have just taken the webcam off the tripod and put it on the monitor. I don't know why I didn't do that, but it's funny.
It was really funny. So you know what's happening in the studio right now, you guys?
What?
19th Nervous Breakdown is setting up.
Really?
Rolling Stones tunes on the radio right here on WATD live.
Oh my gosh, that's right after us on Friends with Benefits.
Yeah, exactly what it is.
Well, I hope people tune in to Friends with Benefits, Paul, because it is a great show. We haven't spoken about that show in a while either. Are they still coming into studio every week?
And I think if you're a fan of the Dr. Joe show, you were a fan of the Stones. So I would stay tuned on WATD for sure.
Absolutely. And you'll actually get the real audio as well. So yes, I think that there is a wonderful irony to this show tonight, as we're talking about schools trying to work out the technology to teach their students. And here we are, trying to work out the technology where we can continue to do our Dr. Joe show, not just from home, but now truly hybrid, because some of us are home and Mark is in the studio.
And we can do it. We can do it, everybody, together.
That's right.
Just be patient, breathe, don't point fingers. Know that everyone's doing the best that they possibly can, which is what I wanted to talk about, Dr. Joe. At one point, we were talking about the public schools, and I was saying that I was talking to some folks in the administration of it, and, you know, I'm having the conversation, hey, how's it going with all the daggers being thrown at you guys? I mean, it must be a constant duck and dive and respond and smile and try to stay positive kind of situation when people are, you know, lining up in large groups shooting arrows at you right now. And what he said was North Carolina early in the summer, because we were talking about this all summer. What are you going to do? North Carolina took an early position saying they're going to go in for 2 weeks, and then no matter what happens, pull everybody out after 2 weeks. And the theory was, if there's an infection, we're already set up to do this. But in reality, the reason we're doing this is because the first 2 weeks of any academic year, there is very little being taught. What they're trying to do is create chemistry, get to know the kids, have the teacher understand the nuances of the class, let the class gel and mold together to create what it will be because of the community that's being created, right? And then they were going to pull back knowing that they knew each other and they could do the Zoom and they could figure things out, let the dust settle. I don't know if they followed through with that strategy, but if you think about it, the teachers aren't typically teaching a lot right now, and they're still trying to do what they would do in a typical curriculum, which is get to know the kids, try to feel out, how am I going to do this? And now they have all this technology thrown at them to try to add on to that. But you have parents who are like, well, what's my kid doing? But let's really think about that for a second. The kid gets on the bus, takes time to get on the bus, gets to school. There's downtime, there's hallway time, there's lunch time. How many hours are you actually learning when the kid's at school, right? We're talking about the whole corporate world, if you want to analogize that. You know, how much work are you actually doing for the time you've left your house, right? You sit in traffic for 2 hours, sometimes 2 hours each way, which I don't think will ever happen again. And then how many times are you interrupted throughout the day? And you know, how productive are you versus, you know, how many hours are you productive in flow, making things happen? And can you do that at home at a very different time? So the corporate world kind of figured it out. The families and the communities and the schools will figure it out too. It's just everyone needs to breathe and kind of let each other kind of figure it all out.
You know, you just sort of inspired thought in me. One of the things that I have always been concerned about with the format of our education is asking kids to shift cognitive gear every 45 or 90 minutes. Now, if you go to a job, yeah, you may have different tasks that you are asked to do and jobs, but it's within a frame of this is your job. But in school, you have to maybe go from English to history, and then to math, and then to
chemistry,
language tests, and then chemistry. What if we changed the whole format because of COVID? And for 4 weeks, kids just learned math. Nothing else. They didn't shift from one class to another.
Or all day Monday is math and science.
Exactly. Right.
Back and buys.
Right. So some model in that where the kid is focused in on one subject for a prolonged period of time that allows them just to concentrate on that without having to think, okay, my next class is English. I have to get out of my math head and go to my English head. That would be really interesting. And you know, all of this stuff, we can track it all. We can do research on all of this stuff and really look at outcome and see what happened. I'm gonna write that idea down and pass that on to some people.
That's the IM Institute.
That's what the IM Institute is going to be, where we were going to focus for a while just on one of the 4 domains and get deep into just one of the domains and see how it goes.
It is strange that it's like my, you know, everyone has that kind of solipsistic episode where you're like, wait a minute, it's like everyone is thinking the same thing I am, where Mark and I have read this book called The 4-Hour Workweek, which I don't know about you, Mark, but it has definitely reshaped like my brain. And now it's like everyone's forced to live it, where the 4-hour work week, it's not, you know, verbatim 4-hour work week, but it's the idea of maximizing your productive hours so that maybe you can hypothetically have a 4-hour work week or just a 6-hour day. Wouldn't that be nice? And it's strange that we're all having this experiment now. And that's the great thing about COVID. What a phrase. But
yeah, I know.
I think there's going to be a lot of very, very good that's going to come out of this. Not without a lot of pain, but I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of this. A lot of conversations are being had. Why are we doing it this way? Because we've always done it that way. Okay, not a great answer for me. Let's rethink this, reframe this, and where is it more efficient? How can we do this better? Right?
That's the funny thing, though, Mark, is that we haven't always done it this way. This is how we've done it for a century and a half since the Industrial Revolution, and now we're trying to figure out what can stay and what should go.
But it's all what people who are walking around here remember, right? Not a lot has changed. Technology is forcing change. Have you seen Social Dilemma yet, by the way, Dr. Joe?
No, tell me about that.
My goodness, no, can't do it. Remember the day after where everybody had to watch that? Everybody sat around and every person in the country knew that it was being Monday night, 8:00, the day after. It was probably 1983 at the height of the Cold War. Social Dilemma's like that. Like everybody needs to see that movie. It's on Netflix. And the irony of it was that it was up top notifying me, hey, Mark, you would want to watch this, so you should watch this. And that's really what it's about, which is pretty funny. But what I want to talk about, Dr. Joe, right now, if we can, is the parents who are now working shoulder to shoulder with their kids, trying to do the best that they can and realizing, whoa, this ADD is for real. What do we do?
You know, what's great is that it took us all this time to get there, which is it's just such an...
It's fine.
When our call-in was happening, though, too. That was the
thought. That was brilliant. I wasn't paying attention.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
And we're back with the Dr. Joe Show.
You know, what's great is so many kids with attention deficit get so easily distracted by other things. And millions of years ago, that was fine. You know, we know that the prevalence, you know, the number of kids in community with ADD is about 5%, which is like 1 out of every 20. And millions of years ago, it was great to have a kid or person who was really a scanner, right? I think we spoke about this. It would look around, you know, be sure, you know, no predators, no saber-toothed tigers were coming. You put that kid in a classroom, though, and it's distracting, not just to them, but to everyone else. Attention deficit, sometimes we don't pay enough attention to these kids and their own needs. And I want to be sure that we pay attention to our sponsors and their needs. And so what we're going to do, please pay attention. We're going to take our last commercial break, and we will be back with the final part of this episode of the Dr. Joe Show. God, you did well. You paid attention the whole time. Let's take a break.
Now is the time for fall plan.
So, yeah. Mark, can you still hear us or not anymore? Mark can't hear us. We'll just...
So how do we bring me in next time?
I know, but I can...
Are you going in the studio again next week?
Final part. No, like for the next part of the show.
Oh.
I don't know what happened there. We just couldn't hear you at all.
It was Ben was still muted.
Oh, Ben was muted.
He had to mute himself.
So okay. Yeah. So we'll get there. Can you still hear us or not anymore? Mark can't hear us.
There's either a real bad delay or...
Are you going in the studio again next week?
Wow.
Are you watching live on that? No. Okay.
I don't know what happened there. We just couldn't.
Yeah. So between here and YouTube Live, there's about a...
Still muted. Oh, Ben was muted.
Yeah, so 20-second delay.
Okay.
20?
Like I don't know. I'm guessing, but it feels like that.
I love this. It's like, it really is like living in two realities. It's so good. Maybe 3 realities, right? I am so into it. It's great. Remember when
Dr. Schrodinger's show.
Right. Remember when we had Chris Sarson on or our friends from New Zealand, and it was just so mind-blowing to think that time was the same time for us here as there, but it was really a different day.
Wait, so you guys are on the same time zone?
It really is like living in 2 realities. Well, right now we
arbitrarily by human measurements.
So into it, it's great. Remember when
if you want to like get really nitty gritty,
yeah,
the very mass around us is changing time. It's like Interstellar. It's boring.
But
you remember Interstellar? They're on that planet near a black hole, and so time is like 1,000 times faster. Matthew McConaughey gets out; his daughter's like 90.
Yeah, it's just I just love. Hey, nice mask, Styles Law. All right, so are we about to go into the final thing? And if Kelly comes on, how are we going to manage that? She'll just like zoom in to our waiting room, and we'll just open it up for her.
She has the invite.
Okay. All right.
Hi.
Oh, did it work? Are we back? Ground control to Dr. Joe. Are we back? How weird was that? Now, Thomas, you have to tell me that was able to be recorded in the bizarro world that we were just experiencing right there.
Well, it's recording on my end.
All right.
I'll say that much. I'm sure Ben's recording is a lot cleaner with your voice, so I'll probably be cutting back and forth between us and yours.
So I had the Zoom open with the microphone and unmuted, and I was talking into the microphone to them, and there was at least a 7-second delay in 2 conversations. Right? It was something I've never quite experienced. I'm not sure I want to again. It was weird.
It was incredible, but what a fascinating cognitive challenge.
I couldn't handle it. I actually wanted to run.
It's like the audio equivalent of the gorilla on the basketball court.
The gorilla on the basketball court?
It was some experiment where they get people to. Oh, there she is.
Hi.
Here's Kelly.
There she is.
Kelly Miller. How are you, Kelly? It's so nice that you just jumped right in. It's awesome. We've been having this, just so you know, we've got Kelly Miller here is calling in from California. Is that right? Where are you?
Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been having this most bizarre evening because Mark unexpectedly wound up in studio because we haven't actually been in studio. We've been doing everything remote. Mark's in studio. But because of that, there are all these like weird audio things. And we're live on YouTube. So it's just wonderful to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to see you.
Do you think you're going to be able to come back next week?
Yes, good. Confirmed.
Excellent. That's great. Yeah. Because what we really want to talk about is do this deeper dive into attention deficit, into online schooling, the hybrid model, what we can do to help our kids. But just to recap, at the beginning, we were talking about how teachers are asked now to be technologists and how parents are asked to be teachers and kids are asked to be adaptable. I mean, it's just
so hard.
Yeah.
So hard.
And so what are you guys noticing out there in LA?
Oh my God. Well, if you ask me and my parent friend group, I mean, we just have to make jokes to keep ourselves alive here. It's crazy. No, I think it's a struggle for everybody. It's exactly what you said. I think the teachers are struggling. I think the parents are struggling, and I think the kids are struggling. But I think for me, it's a really nice opportunity to teach our kids. This is one step in resilience. How do we get through this? How do we deal with uncertainty? What are the lessons that we can take out of this? And that's kind of the only way we can go, I think. At this point.
It's so true. I mean, the resiliency is absolutely such an important part of this for not just our kids, but for all of us. It's really showing, again, the importance of valuing each other. Because remember, the literature is so clear on this in terms of resiliency. Every resilient kid who's gone through any trauma has had at least one person who saw them as valuable, one person who believed in them. And that's what we need to do. And Mark was talking about how teachers are metaphorically having daggers thrown at them. It's not the teacher's fault,
No,
we're all in this.
Of course, yeah.
So are you guys doing online learning there?
Yeah. So in LA, it's all online. Not even a hybrid. So it's tough.
What about the parents? I know, talking on our last show, you said you were focusing on adults with ADD. Are you pivoting into helping parents cope with this? And if so, what do you tell that parent who didn't realize what ADD really was until recently?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and next week I was thinking I have a whole list of tips. But just kind of at a high level, I mean, I think that, first of all, we just have to lower standards all around. I mean, lower the standards that your kids are going to be learning at that same level. I know a lot of parents are worried about that, but I think it's also this, lowering our expectations as parents, especially if you're working and trying to homeschool. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the first start is like, okay, we just got to lower things down. And then also realizing that if you're dealing with a kid who's atypical, I mean, they are not going to be able to do what a typical kid can do. And so, you know, really utilizing those resources. I mean, IEPs are still existing, you know, the IEP plans. So really talking with the resource teachers, hey, what are your suggestions? What are your ideas? You know, utilizing that team effort. I think a lot of times parents feel so isolated, like, you know, oh my God, I got to deal with this on my own. And I'm always encouraging them, no, you know, reach out to the advocates, get everybody involved at once. You know, it's gonna work a lot better and smoother.
That is such great advice. Never worry alone. You know, that's the first rule I actually teach everyone, never worry alone. The second rule is the therapist must survive. And in this case, you know, the parent must survive, the kid must survive, all of us need to survive. But I think, you know, we're again on this cusp of potentially a huge shift in the way we understand education and the way it's delivered. You know, how are we going to do this? It's going to be interesting. Kelly, tell people about the book, because I know we're going to talk about it more next week, but I want people to understand how cool this is. What's happened?
Thank you. So it's called Thriving with ADHD. It's a workbook for kids, and it's typically with kids 7 to 12 with ADHD. So, you know, it's obviously geared toward kids who have attention issues. And so as you know, or I've shared before, I have 2 boys with ADHD. So I completely get it. And so these are, you know, kid tested with my kids. So I know that if they can do it, okay, great. You know, they're my guinea pigs. So, you know, it's just a ton of activities, organizational skills, things that really could come in handy now, I think, for everything that's going on.
And I think it probably could come in handy for everyone, not just ADD kids. I mean, that's one of the things about special ed in general is it's so applicable to all kids if you can just understand the unique way different brains learn and the remarkable privilege and opportunity we have to teach to that amazing brain. So the book has been doing pretty well. What's been going on with that?
I was, you know, I'm very surprised, like in a great way. You know, you just kind of go in, and I had 6 weeks to write it. So it's just sort of like, all right, do it and go in. And, you know, it's what I think the best part for me is people from all over the world have been writing to me. I recently got an email from a woman in China saying that, you know, ADHD is not really talked about in China. She was so grateful to have this book. And now I learned it's going to be translated in Chinese. So for those populations, which I think is great, but I think there's still so much to be learned about it. I mean, I still have people to this day, when I say I have 2 boys with ADHD, they say, is that really real? You know, like I think, you know, and to no fault of their own, I just think they think it's sort of some, you know, made up thing. And so I think we're, you know, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go too. So I'm glad that the education is out there. And I'm also, thank you for speaking to the fact that this book can apply to anybody, because I think really my goal was to kind of say, you know, we all have our strengths, all kids do. And, you know, in general, whether you're atypical or typical, you just kind of have your strengths. And I use myself as an example. I'm horrible with directions. I mean, I'm like an infant, and I have to take pictures of my parking spots when I park. And I tell people that because it's like you learn to adapt, right? It's like, okay, I know that I'm not great with directions. So how am I going to make this easier for my life? And it same with kids with issues, you know, learning, like what's going to help you learn best. You know, you're not bad because of this. We just have to find the workaround for you. And so, you know, and same with online learning, like, you know, like I said, I'll give you some tips next week, but it's like, you know, maybe you personally can only do 20 minutes before you have to get up and get a break, you know, so it's just kind of figuring out really what works best for the child.
Yeah. And it's a rare opportunity for parents to actually have time to see that. Because so often the kid is in school, and as Mark is saying, you know, you don't always understand what's happening in that classroom. Now you are the classroom. And of course, you've always been the classroom in a way. The other thing about ADD being real, it's real, but it's on a spectrum, like all of these things. You know, everybody gets sad, but not everybody gets major depression. You know, everybody gets a little worried about things, but not everybody will have a panic attack. And everybody gets distracted.
Right.
And not everyone has attention deficit. And I can't stand the term deficit to begin with, because it's so demeaning.
Right.
You know, just like I don't use the word disorder either, because as soon as you use the word disorder, you've got a group that's ordered and a group that is not. And then we are astonished that we have something called stigma.
Right.
What's a better term for it?
We are conditioned.
I know, but attention condition?
Well, you know what? We can have people write in.
Yeah.
I love that.
Between now and next week, and see if we get any, if anyone's paying attention, to see what we get. So, Kelly, I am just so thrilled that you were willing to come in. Just so people know, I texted Kelly literally at the last minute and said, hey, listen, we're going to be talking about this. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention earlier. Can you come on? And she bumped on like this right now, and she's coming back next week. So for that, folks, please tune in next week to the Dr. Joe Show. It's going to be so much fun. And for everyone, Ben, thanks a lot. Mark, great to have you in the studio. Guys, we'll see you all next week.
Kelly, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah, the gorilla in the basketball court.
Yeah. Let's hear it. This is like a bonus content. Go ahead.
It has something to do with an attention experiment. So they'd have people watch a clip of two people, I think, dribbling a basketball to each other, and they were asked to count how many times they passed the ball. I think it was along the lines of that. And in the video, about halfway through, a guy in a gorilla suit just walks right across the court. No one notices.
Wow. That's great. I got to find that. I thought you were going to, I had no idea where that was going. There must be a paper written about that. We've got to find that paper.
It would work great for next week, wouldn't it?
It would be. There's a whole bunch of things. I don't know why. It just made me think of the basketball player with diarrhea.
Oh.
He dribbled halfway down the court.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. All right, guys. That was your extra content on YouTube. We'll see you next week. Tom, thanks for everything. Thanks for everything you did with Drug Free Theater as well this week. I really.
So you liked the second video?
Yeah, it was great. I sent it off. It's perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
The first one was great too. We can use that as well for something else.
It's more trailery.
Yeah, more trailery, more